Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I actually had a different video planned for today, but today was such an incredible trading day that I decided it would be best to do a trade recap on the entries and exits that I took in order to show how I put together everything that we've discussed in my previous volume price analysis series. Before we get started, if you'd like to get a 10% discount for Trade Addicts, don't forget to use my referral link in the description. You'll also find referral links for TradingView and the Top Step funded trader programs that will give us both discounts. Lastly, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to help me grow this channel. So I have in front of me the 3-minute chart of micro ES. Now, that being said, if you trade SPY primarily, which I know most people do, the charts are identical, and the data I use is for SPY. I just apply it to ES. And also, if you're an SPX trader, that works as well. All the movement was the same, the charts were the same, the data was the same, everything looks the same. So everything I show here can easily be applied to SPY. Or if you want to get into futures trading, then sure enough, you can use this on ES minis or ES micros. I prefer to trade ES micros. Now, before I start off, let's talk about the mindset going into today. So I have it stopped here at 9:12, and the first thing was on Friday we had a terrible CPI data report showing that inflation is more out of control than expected, which had been causing massive sell-offs. So today I was very, I had the assumption that we were going to keep moving down. On top of that, FOMC is coming up on Wednesday, so if you're not aware of that, that's definitely an important event coming up. And now, because CPI data was so bad, there's a good chance that the feds are going to put 75 BPS back on the table for rate raises. If they don't raise it 75 BPS, it will at least be discussed. And now the market needs to build that possibility into the charts. So again, that just leads to more chances of a sell-off. So, and there's been other bad economic news. I mean, I'm sure most of you have heard food shortages and recession worries, and certainly looks like it's going that route, seeing what a lot of companies are doing. Even my own company seems to be tightening up a bit. So there's a lot of fear out there in general, and there probably should be. And then to add to it even more, we had this pre-market sell-off, and I'll get into the indicators I have on my chart. These are the indicators I use every day when I trade. And when I was looking at Trade Addicts for my preparation, we can see the gamma exposure was very negative, indicating very high volatility. So we knew there would be a lot of big swings back and forth, which also corresponds at the beginning of the day. If we look around the same time, I mean, VIX was over 30. Whenever VIX is over 30, volatility is going to be very high. There's going to be a lot of big swings, and things can get nasty. Now, the other thing I was looking at, just to make sure that I had the right sentiment in mind, was the dark pool levels, which we could see that from what we can tell from the block trades, the dark pool sentiment was also very bearish. And I just want to point out something specifically with the gamma exposure. I knew today that possibly 385 or 3850, 380 or 3800, and 375 or 3750 were going to be big levels. If we got below 3750 or 375 if you're trading SPY, then there was a good chance we could go all the way down to 3700. But knowing that negative gamma exposure and high VIX does not just simply mean down, it means high volatility. There's a good chance for swings back and forth. Now, I was going to be more put focused, more short focused, but I didn't want to miss a good opportunity for a long position or a call position, at least a scalp, if the opportunity came up, because such big swings are definitely possible on days like this. So, and then the last thing to note is that all of the sectors were in the red. Now, I have a indicator that you'll see down here that I plan on making free for everyone. I'm still developing it myself. This is a pay-for indicator I use. But I truly think I've built indicators before in TradingView, and I'm 99% sure I can make this one free. I just have to figure out some of the cumulative math. But this indicator takes all of the sectors for me and shows, you can put weighted inputs of the S&P 500 sectors, and it will automatically show me how those sectors are doing, which is nice. So then the only thing I have to pay attention to is what NQ is doing and what VIX is doing, because I have all my sector data down there already. The other indicators I use, I've talked about in my other videos, so if you're not sure what they are, please check those out. I have regular volume that you see down below. I have the periodic volume profile, which is set to 1 day. Value area is 70, which will come up big time in this video, helped me catch several big trades. I extend the POC and value area high and value area low lines to the right, and here's the colors I use. POC is orange, value area low is this shade of green, value area high is this more of a pink, but it's a shade of red. And then I make sure they extend to the right, because with futures we have all this pre-market data which you can trade, which I actually did trade last night and caught some great trades, but I'm not here to discuss that because I want to focus on market open. And then I also have the visible range to my right, which is just another version of volume profile. I turn off the value area stuff in the POC because visible range only shows the volume for the candles that you're looking at. And then I have VWAP, and that will also come up today. And VWAP, I don't use it to, like, I'm not one of those people that says, oh, I only take longs if it's or calls if it's above, and shorts or puts if it's below. I treat VWAP as a level because it does indeed act as a level. It's actually quite fascinating. So those are the indicators. I don't use any bands or standard deviations, although there's some interesting stuff you can do with that, but I don't typically use those. So now that you understand how my chart's set up, let's get right into it, and I'll talk about my mindset right around this time. So you can see we were struggling to break above this high, which was 38.20. So I actually did mark a resistance level here, and I'll mark it right up. It's not, let me clear these off 1 sec. So I have a resistance level right here, and my plan going in was, if I didn't know if we would, but if we come up to that line, I'm gonna look for wicks showing a rejection. So let's go ahead and play that out. And so we can start watching the day unfold here, and let me just I might have to speed this up a tiny bit. Okay, or maybe not. All right, so it just started running without me. Sorry for that. So let me hide this visible range. And so you can see here, we have this line is our value area low, this line is our value area high, this is the resistance point. And right out of the gate, let me mark this back a little bit. We could see that we were trying to get up, we couldn't quite do it. So the first thing I did was set a limit order at 38.17, which it did get picked up on this candle. Again, this is the 3-minute chart. As soon as I saw this rejection candle, I wasn't sure if we'd come back up, but I did set a limit order up here to try to capture it. I didn't set it too high, I didn't want it right at 38.20, so I set it right around here, and sure enough it picked up, and it was a fantastic entry. And now at this point, I'm also, so this is now 9:42, I'm also keeping an eye on the market net flow to see what it's doing, and we don't have a lot of data at this point. You can see that both puts and calls are kind of showing on the rise, but I'm going to keep an eye on it. And also, if we zoom out just a bit, I'll go to the 2-day, so you can see here, we know that puts are definitely in control, and they have been for some time, and I knew that wasn't likely to change despite at the 1-day open, because remember, this is cumulative from the start. So even though calls were a little bit up right here, I knew most likely puts would overtake it just because of the daily sentiment. So going back, I'm in this position, and now my plan is to hold until we get to at least the value area low. But also, what we can do here is, when we get another pivot up, as long as it doesn't break too high or close too high, I can start to draw a trend line. So let's see how that plays out. And again, I'm peeking at market net flow, I'm peeking at the sector data that we have below. And so right there, you can see we moved up a little bit, and this is where I drew a trend line like this. And because I wasn't sure how low we could actually go today, I just had a feeling we were gonna go low. I didn't want to get out too soon. I wanted to be patient with my plays. I was only doing 2 micros at a time because of the potential volatility, and I wanted to be able to hold through the volatility in the event that things got a little scary. And also, when you play the open, these long wicks are always very common. You just kind of get used to seeing it, and you know not to get scared out of positions. Basically, my stop would have been if we broke and closed above 38.20, I 100% would have stopped out and then reassessed. But at this point, despite these long wicks, I'm not going to get stopped out for just a few points profit. I was looking for more. And so we'll let this keep playing out. And what we start to see is we start to see a bit of consolidation. And again, I'm looking to see how we react to that trend line. And we start seeing these wicks forming right off that trend line and right at that POC. The POC again is this orange line. And so at this point, I'm looking to add another micro or two, and that's what I do. I set a limit order right around here when we start seeing these wicks. Again, at this point, if we break above the value area high, I would plan to stop. But I'm just so sure of things going down because of the way the economy is looking. And then on top of that, thankfully, we start to see puts really rise up, which is great news for my positions, where we see this nice market cross, and right away, puts start breaking away. You can also see this big momentum shift, and actually market net flow even gave us an alert, which is fantastic. Whenever I see that, it just is extra confirmation. I don't play momentum solely, but I do always like it when I'm in a position. It helps confirm that I'm doing the right thing. Also, it's worth noting, I do continually look at VIX during this time to make sure that VIX is responding properly. I'd like to see VIX going up when I'm hoping that the market goes down. Oftentimes VIX will start moving up prior to the market moving down. And then I also keep an eye on NQ, and you can see NQ, and if you're doing SPY, then you'd be looking at QQQ, but you can see it was doing the exact same thing. And in this case, NQ, it was holding the value area high. So if we come back, everything looks good. There's no reason to get out. I actually add positions on, and then we just, boom, start to plummet. And at this point, I'm just rejoicing. I was just hoping that, I wanted this thing just to keep dying. And the second that I start to see support come in, like what we're talking about coming up here, I know that, okay, this is going to be my first support line right at 3770, or 377 if you're playing SPY. So we'll mark that, and just to make it a little more accurate. Now, 377, we look at the gamma exposure. There's not a ton of gamma, but it's still in between these two major levels, and so it's likely to become support. Now, my plan was if we break above this value area low line at this point, now this is my new exit. I'm sliding my stops. I'm always sliding my stops. If we break above this value area low, then I'll exit my position. And quite honestly, I was considering adding a position, and I didn't, just because I was so confident things would go down. The one thing that kept me out was the sectors were going slightly green here. Now, if we let this play through, you'll see that we just get it dump. And when I saw this value area low shift like this, I immediately should have tried to get in right here to add a position. But at this point, I'm holding 4 micros, which is usually a lot for me. I don't, and in times, especially in times of high volatility, I don't play fast and loose. I keep smaller amounts. At this point, just so you know, every point on micro ES is $5 per micro contract, so I'm looking basically at $20 per point. And I'm already up significantly at this point. And the big thing is now I just want to make sure I secure my bag. So when we see that drop through support, I'm just very happy with how this is playing out. Keeping an eye on market net flow throughout, making sure that puts continue to rise as we see this drop, and that there's no sudden spike in calls or anything like that. Keeping an eye on VIX, keeping an eye on NQ. And right here, we start to get another sign of support. So with this strong green candle, whenever I see that come in, if I don't know how low we can go, and my trend lines no longer apply at this point, I mean, I guess they can sort of apply, but this would be too far of a comeback. So my plan now is if we break above this line, I'd get out, but I still want to try to hold as much as possible. I'm just looking for us to stay under 3770 based on the stops that I'm sliding. And I actually, so when we see this happen right here, I'm like, okay, this is getting crazy. Now, I almost considered adding a position on this retest. However, on this next candle, I did slide my stops, right, because I see this retest, slide my stops down, and then right here, coming up, right here, this candle took me out. So this exited all my positions, which I was perfectly fine with. So 38.17, all the way down to 37.56. I was very happy with how that played out. And now I just want to sit back and reassess the market and see what happens. And after this big of a sell-off, we typically can expect to see buyers come in. And when we see multiple candles like this, it kind of blew me away. I didn't expect to see this much strength. It actually astonished me. But this is actually, and I've seen this before, and it's kind of like, it reminds me of when, if like someone's drilling for oil and they drill real deep and they're drilling and drilling and drilling, and then eventually they hit an area with a ton of oil in it, and then, oh, and I should draw a support line here, but hit an area with a ton of oil, and then it just comes rocketing out. And that's kind of like what happens here. We hit an area of a ton of liquidity, and we just see buyers start to just rocket up and push this thing higher. At this point, I still wasn't comfortable with grabbing longs or calls. Now, if you were, I could totally see why, especially coming up here. And this is one play I wish I took, but I did not. So we see here now volume price analysis tells us, okay, this is a bearish candle and it's on good volume. We're going to keep going down. But this 37.70 level that we had come into play here, that did not act as resistance, surprisingly, because the buyers were so strong. This level actually becomes a massive level for the day. And not only does it become a massive level, as you can see here, but it corresponds with the value area low from volume profile, which is very, very important to me. These value areas, if I were to play nothing else throughout the day, I would just play these value areas because they are so incredibly powerful. So now I'm looking at, now this would have been a great long opportunity when you see this hold at this support and you see the value area low hold, but I was still just being hesitant here and wanted to see how this would play out, especially with the sectors going green, with VIX moving down. And what I wanted to see now was, how high are they going to take us, for one? Like, are we just going to give back the whole move? And I also wanted to see if volume could keep up. And what ends up happening is, for a while, we just sort of end up going back and forth, chopping around, and we're sort of in no man's land. And quite honestly, there is a level around here that I forgot to draw, but you can see these lows that we held for a second. So, you know, you could take a short position off here, but in my mind, the best entries would have been off this support and the value area low. And since I'm not already in a position holding long, I'm not going to try to take something, especially because at this point I'm sort of taken back. I'm sort of confused as to, not confused, but just astonished by the strength of this move. Also, if we look at the market net flow, so if we look here, we're at 1224, so almost 1230, and if we look at the market net flow, we could see that calls and puts are stagnant. So at this point, it's really just liquidity from futures buyers and sellers just battling this out. And because these are both stagnant and we're in the middle of no man's land, I'm just holding steady at this point until, now what I wanted to see is if we get up to this value area high. So first thing I'm looking at is the POC and the VWAP. How are we going to react here? Then I want to see if we get past that, how we react at the value area high. And then if we actually get up to it, 38.20, how we react at the high of day, right? So those are the three reactions that I'm watching for. And using volume price analysis, we'll try to determine if there's a play that we can take there to go short again. So as we keep pushing up, you know, we're getting red candle, green candle, red candle, green candle, and we get strength right through the POC and right through the value area high. And once again, I was just astonished by this. But what's interesting, and if you don't know with market net flow, you can actually use, so one, I always have these algorithmic support and resistance levels by TradeView on here, and you could see the algo did determine there was a level up here. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a way to replay this, so I just have to show you as is. But also, so I wanted to see how the algo levels held as well, if we get some sort of reaction, but how it's going to hold now that we're at the value area high. Again, I love taking plays off value area low and value area high. I'll do it all day. So If we get an indication here that this value area high is going to stop things up, then I will gladly enter a short. And so when we get there, boom, we get a big red engulfing on higher volume, and that's actually enough for me to enter a position. And these are one of the rare candles that I will actually mark it in. When we see an engulfing candle that engulfs a previous candle off of a value area high, and I'll zoom in, and as you can see, we even get a nice wick off the value area high, which I love to see, and we get this engulfing candle. Like, this is an indication to me that we're just going to move lower, and I was expecting moves down. So at this point, I take shorts, and the first level I'm going to be watching to exit is the value area low, and then, well, this is zone, I should say. The value area low down to 37.70 is my target at this point. So we enter shorts around 38.02.75, and we're seeing how we're reacting right around this support level. It doesn't really do a whole lot, and once again we can ride these shorts down, and then we get to the value area low. Now this is the point where I actually decide to slide my stops one candle higher, just in case, because I always expect a reaction off of it. And let's play again, and we start, and it actually takes me out right there. So now, if I'm not mistaken, so this candle right here is what took me out, and at this point now I'm just kind of reassessing for the next play, and it's sort of looking like longs, but we see the value area low shift down, and at this point I never have a problem with, when I get this big of a move, when I get from 38.03 down to 37.80, so we're talking about 23 points on 2 micros, which is $230. I'm always very happy with that. I'll never complain about making $230 in one trade. That's good money for where I'm at in my trading career, and quite honestly, we're at this point, it feels like we're leaving money on the table, but that's okay. And again, I'm still looking for shorts, so I want to see, okay, do we break under or do we hold here? And where this gets interesting, because now we're trapped at 37.70, which is now becoming the value area low, which is just kind of amazing stuff. We see that we did get a little spike in puts, but nothing significant, right? So market net flow is just kind of stagnant. We see VIX correlating perfectly, going down as ES is going up, and vice versa, consolidating in the same areas. We see NQ following perfectly as well. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, if we break below 37.70 and we get a retest, I will take a trade. And so what ends up happening though is, you'll notice this candle here, now this is right around, like, this is around 130. Volume is lower than it was previously in the day. A lot of volume drops off around this time typically, but we did get a bull hammer, and we did get this strong move through the POC. And had I been more receptive to a move up, which I really should have been, because VIX being high and gamma exposure being high does not mean bearish day. Now, like I said, all the other fundamental stuff we talked about does, but you could have caught a really nice move off this value area low, and I really regret not taking that, especially looking now. Let me pause this up. Now this is actually where I do get into a play. As I mentioned before, I keep the VWAP on my chart because there are many times it acts as a level, and right here, this candle right here was my level. And once again, we get a nice shooting star down. This is a strong rejection candle. I didn't mark it in, but I always set my limits a little bit under this, like right, or a little bit above the top part of the base of that candle. So the next candle, what you can see right here, did pick up my short, and I was, this kind of entry is perfect. So now I'm in a short off of the VWAP, which now if I had taken a position here, and once we got up to this level and then the VWAP, I would have been looking to exit anyway. And this would have actually been a great case for just hitting reverse. You can't do it with all brokers, but when you're trading futures and other brokers like Interactive Brokers with some brokers allow you to do reversals, but Trade-of-8 futures allow you to easily reverse. And had I already been in this position, I 100% would have reversed. But regardless, I wasn't. So now I'm looking to take a short. and my stop is actually above the VWAP. And at this point, we start getting another nice move down. And again, my target here, because you always need to have a target. Whenever you enter a trade, you should never enter a trade without a clear target. So I want to see how we're going to react to the POC and how we're going to react at the value area low slash 3770, which has proven itself already twice to be an incredibly strong level. Now, one thing that's interesting to note is when we broke above and retested it last time, at the time this was the value area high. As you can see, the value area high has moved lower, but at the time this was the value area high. We got all the way up here. We almost got back to the high of day. This time when we pop off of it, we get a little lower and the VWAP is able to hold it up. So now I'm thinking, okay, if we do hold here, I'm going to exit, but I'm hesitant now because I don't want to enter off of it because I just feel like it's going to be a weak push higher. And this actually got scary for me, but these topside wicks kept me in it. And boom, right here, I actually thought we were going to break through it. I got very excited. I slid my stop to be right above the value area high, and then right away my stop gets triggered. I was very happy with this trade though, so yeah, you can see my stop got triggered right here. Very happy with this trade though. We took it from 37, it was 37.9750 all the way down to right above the value area high, which was 37.72. So again, I had 2 micros on with that trade, as I usually do. And then at this point, we start, so I'm looking like, okay, we're getting a weaker reaction. We just tested this support again. We got a bullish engulfing, which actually probably would have been another good long entry off the same level. So, you know, I missed 1, 2, 3 long entries now off of a very strong support level. But again, we're getting a weaker move higher. This is showing us, okay, we're not at all, like, we're losing strength here every time we touch this level. That's a good indication that when we break through this level, we're going to break through this level. And so my plan was, if we come down to this level, I was going to look for a break and a retest. And so sure enough, we break it. And right here, I got excited. Now, what I normally do is when I'm looking for a break and a retest, I'm looking for multiple wicks retesting it. But I'll be the first to admit I got a little greedy here. And I put a limit order in looking for this retest. And we got it. And then I immediately got stopped out because the strength of this candle was just so much that I was like, you know what, I can't hold through it. At the time, it looked scarier. If I would have held a little longer, maybe my stop could have been more liberal at the POC. Thinking about it now, and that's what's always nice about recapping your trades. You can kind of think about like, okay, what could I have done differently, knowing it's a volatile day. I should have waited, because we know that this level is weakening and that the bounce off of it is getting weaker. So I should have let it play out and maybe had my stop at the POC. And that's something, looking back now, it's easy for me to see. And if we look now, we're getting into power hour. And so power hour, I'm always a little more cautious. But you can see we're starting to move down. Oh, and that's the other thing. What also kind of scared me out was I saw puts on market net flow actually weakening and call strengthening. So I was like, I got a little over ambitious. I need to exit. You know, VIX and NQ and sectors were doing what we would expect at this time. Sectors were looking stronger but weak, you know, flat almost, nothing special. But so I got shook out there. We immediately drop, and then power hour, and at this point I'm like shaking my head like, oh, why did I let that out? And then this candle happens. And now I like to think that I would have slid my stop here. I know I would have. Had I stayed in there, my stop would have been slid here. But I still would have lost here because of this candle. This candle was absurd. We just had this huge buy up, and then it just immediately gets sold into. And right away when I saw this, the first thing I think in my head was they were just clearing out stops. People thought the same thing I did when 37.70 broke, that we're going lower. and market makers needed liquidity to drive this thing lower. And what do here? They clear out all these stops. They go up and absorb them all, and then they get ready to push it lower. And if you have a tool like Bookmap, you can actually see that liquidity being built up, which I'll have to do some videos on soon because it's absolutely incredible. But you do need futures data, though, to get the most out of it. And then sure enough, we started moving lower. And my thought was, okay, at this point, I need to get in. And seeing this liquidity clear out, I've been trading long enough. I know exactly what they're doing here. And at that point, too, let me go back to the time here. So we're looking at 318. And right around 318, right after that happens, we see puts in the market start going up. And so at this point, I was able to market in. So we had our retest. So we had this liquidity clear, then we had the failed retest, and then we start moving down. And I actually marketed in at, let me check my notes, 37.6350. So right around here. And I know we're going into support, but I'm also confident in the move now that, okay, they wanted to blow out liquidity in an effort to drive us lower. And my plan was just to keep my stops trail tight. And right here, when we got below here, I slid my stop here, and then we actually retest and fail again. And as this candle moves through, I slid my stop right above 37.50. Which, if you recall, with the gamma exposure, was a key gamma exposure point. And so I thought we were just going to keep on plummeting at this point, but I'm still sliding my stops conservatively, and I get stopped out. And that's okay, because I was able to capture about 11 points there with the stop in place. And this is actually where things just kind of get crazy. And at this point, we're getting close to 3:45 Eastern, and that's when I get scared to trade the last 15 minutes, especially in times of high volatility, because price action just becomes crazy. And the reason for it is because due to gamma exposure and option selling and everything going on in the market, hedge funds need to hedge, and that's about 15 minutes to a half hour. So basically, markets close truly around 4:15. So a half hour prior, 3:45 to 4:15, a lot of the algos kick in to do what they need to do in order to make sure that they're hedged properly. And at that point, the price action can just go insane, because they start running calculations based on their gamma exposure. Like, okay, how many shares of futures do I need to hedge in order to hedge all my options positions on all the options selling that they did, in order to ensure there's no directional risk. And they start remediating all of that, and things get crazy. So at this point, I just step out of the market. I was happy with the trades. I only had one loss, and it was a pretty minor loss. I actually kind of got saved from what potentially could have been a nasty loss. But anyway, at this point, I decided to step out, and it was very, very successful day. Especially here, I was very proud of myself, because at the beginning of the day, when we had the pre-market, this level hold, and then we started dropping down, I was proud of the fact that I added on more positions before dropping lower. And that's something I'm trying to get better at, is not just having my two and running with them. And I will leave runners, but I rarely actually scale in where I add more. And I was pretty proud of how I actually scaled in here and added more positions, and was able to help hold through the majority of the move while sliding my stop down. And I did think we'd go lower. That's okay. The one thing I could do better is capitalize more on these, because on volatile days we get a lot of back and forth, and capitalizing on these value area low plays. I love playing the value areas. So when I went short on the value area high, that was a no-brainer for me. Going short on the VWAP hold when we see these wicks, that was a no-brainer for me. The 2 or 3 trades I feel like I missed, and that was purely because of bias on the day, where the value area high holds right here, and right here. Albeit, once we start testing a level 3 times, it starts getting scary. I mean, the 4th time we definitely break it, but I certainly missed a solid break and retest right here, and another beautiful retest right here with a nice little hammer candle. When volume was lower, we even have a little spike on this hammer candle and pushes through the POC. So that's what I could have done better, but I'm still very proud of how I traded today, and I hope that you learned something from this, and that if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I just wanted to show how I constantly would bounce between market net flow to look for moves in the flow, whether we're going sideways or not. I'm always checking VIX to confirm, like, okay, if we're sideways but I see VIX dropping, there's a good chance that we're gonna go up, because ES and SPY move counter trend to VIX. So and vice versa, and then I always keep an eye on NQ as well. You can see you could play NQ the same way. If I replay this, you can do a lot of the value areas, and market net flow also applies to that because it shares so many holdings with ES. And then lastly, at some point, I'm gonna finish writing this indicator for free and put it out there on TradingView, and I'm gonna do a whole video about it, but we'll get there. So hopefully that helped someone on how to use market net flow to successfully trade ES, SPY, or SPX, and I appreciate you watching.